Hi everyone, today I'm going to be doing a short review of The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. This is science fiction. It's the fourth book in the Wayfarers series. It just released on April 20th and I received an advanced reader copy of this from Netgalley. I was really interested in reading it because I had read the previous 3 books in the series and wanted to see how this one would compare. Each book in the series has been basically a standalone with maybe one character carrying over from another book. The first book in the series was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which for some reason I still have a hard time saying that title. I'm always worried I'm gonna forget something in there. So I enjoyed that one quite a bit. The second book was A Closed and Common Orbit, which is probably my favorite in the series. And then the third book, Record of a Spaceborn Few. That one I didn't care for so much, so I was really curious to request an arc of book number 4, just because I was curious where it would fall on the spectrum of the previous 3, although of course I was kind of worried that I would end up hating it. Well, not hating it, I was worried I wouldn't like it the same way I felt about book 3, because then that would be a little more awkward when doing a review. Overall, I really did enjoy this entry in the series. I think it was a nice way to end the series, and I think in overall feel, to me, it was probably the closest to the first book. I think if you enjoyed The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, you'll probably really enjoy The Galaxy and the Ground Within as well. If you didn't enjoy it, then this book probably won't be for you. This is a series that appeals to a very particular taste, especially the character-driven reader, and if you are a plot reader, you should just run far, far, far away from this series and just never look back. I think it would probably help you understand this book if you read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, but like I said, every book in this series is a standalone, so you really don't have to have read any of the others. It's more just that there's one character that shows up in that first book that's also in The Galaxy and the Ground Within, and also there's all these different types of aliens and planets and governments, which get explained in this book. You really don't need prior knowledge, and it's not really that important to have deep knowledge of them, but you just might feel a little more familiar with it if you read the first book first. But if you do want to start here, I think that would be totally fine as well. The Galaxy and the Ground Within is set on a planet that basically has no natural life whatsoever. It just is inhabited because it's basically like a way stop for a bunch of like jump points that go different places in the galaxy. So the whole book is set on this planet at this one way stop where 3 travelers have stopped as they think for the day, and then this sort of cataclysmic event takes out all the satellites on the planet, so nobody can land or take off or anything, so they're basically stuck in one place for a couple days and have to talk to each other. The characters we have are Pei. She's a captain and she's a species called Eluan. Basically they look like people, but they're kind of have like shiny, sparkly scales, and they don't naturally talk but communicate with colors. And then there is Roveg, who's kind of a lobster alien. And then there is Speaker, who is kind of a bird alien thing that she gets around, well, all her species get around in mech suits when they're outside of their ships. And then we have the owner of the way stop, Ulu. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Honestly, I have no idea. The name's mostly vowels. She is a Laru, which is some sort of large furry mammal alien. And then Ulu has a kid called Tupo, who is sort of going through an awkward preteen phase. And yeah, those are the 5 characters in this book, basically. They each have their own stuff going on over the amount of time they spend together. They kind of get to know each other. And this is a totally character-driven book. They're really, in my opinion, there's not really a plot. So if you're a plot reader, this whole series probably just isn't going to be for you. And I think it's the kind of series where you try it and either it works for you or really doesn't work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, I don't think there's anything anybody's going to say that's going to convince you to really like it. In my opinion, the reason these books kind of work, even though they don't really have what I would call a traditional plot, is because there is kind of a sense of pacing that follows the pacing of a story with a plot would have. There's an introduction, kind of a middle section, and then around 75 to 80% through the book, there is sort of a rise of dramatic action. It's just that the events don't, I don't even know how to say this. The dramatic events that feel like the climax of the book aren't necessarily built to prior to that, and while they do have effects on all the characters, it just doesn't feel like a real plot structure. Obviously, stuff does happen. The characters have interactions, they do change in some ways over the course of the book, but yeah, as for external plot, it's really not there, and even though the characters have been forced into this situation, all the stakes in the story are very internal. I wouldn't say there's a really strong sense of danger or risk or strong external stakes at any point during this story. It's kind of a cozy story with maybe an undercurrent of anxiety, but it's the anxiety you have when you're stuck at an airport and your flight gets canceled and you don't know when you're going to be able to take off again. It's not like life and death anxiety necessarily. All the characters have their own reasons why they're trying to get to different places and they're traveling, and we learn more about that as things go on. They all have complicated things in their lives and pasts, but it's really a story about them getting to know and understand each other better and get to know and understand themselves better. The characters are struggling with stakes and life decisions, but they're not necessarily things that have any effect on anyone aside from themselves. I feel like one of the reasons that people enjoy the Wayfarers series is because you get this really wide range of alien life. There's this huge diversity of these different kinds of aliens. They have different genders, different cultural and community structures, different biology. There's really all sorts of very creative, different ways that the aliens can be, but they all do feel kind of fundamentally, well, maybe not human, but they all feel like people. So it's a way to sort of explore this diversity, but also just what makes us all fundamentally the same in kind of interesting ways. All these aliens still have their own very relatable fears, desires, career struggles, not knowing how to balance family and career, just kinds of things that a lot of people deal with, except, they might be a lobster. I feel like the picture of the galactic commons that Becky Chambers gives us, it's a very aspirational view of this very diverse galaxy with all these different aliens mostly coexisting pretty peacefully with occasional conflicts, a side of bureaucracy. It's like aspirational but not total fantasy, which I think adds to this sort of overall positive feeling that the series will evoke in you. This is a book that you really have to be in the mood for. I think it caught me at a good time. I felt like I really connected to the characters. I liked them. I liked their quirks. I liked the way they were genuinely trying to communicate and get to know each other better, and the way they were navigating their differences and different species, things like that. I felt like at a different time, I might have found this pretty boring. It's not that long. I think it's just something you have to be in the mood for it to really connect to it. And if you're the kind of person that really wants a genuine side of plot in your books, you probably shouldn't read this. It's very soft science fiction as well. There's a lot of social exploration in this series, but not a lot of hard science. This was a really nice way to wrap up the series. I don't know exactly where I'd rank it in the 4. I feel like I enjoyed it as much or maybe even more than the first book. The second book, A Closed and Common Orbit, still remains my favorite. I think it actually had the most plot and the most stakes, and also this really interesting exploration of artificial intelligence, which I really liked. So I think that one remains my favorite, but The Galaxy and the Ground Within is definitely up there. I definitely connected with it emotionally. I was definitely in the right place to appreciate this book. I think if you're interested in the series, or if you read and liked at least the first book, definitely check this one out. Like I said, it's not going to be for every reader, but if this is your kind of thing and you're in the mood, I think this is a really nice read.